All right, everybody, welcome back. Good late morning or early afternoon for some of you. We're back on our tight end grind, and now we're moving towards the more likely day three options. These are some guys who are good, who bring positive things to the table, but for one reason or another, I don't think they're going to be in the top 100, and more than likely, they're going to be around day three. Some of them early day three, some of them late day three. But I still like some of these guys, and we're probably going to have to hit down here. Unless Bowers falls to us at 16, then we are probably going to have to strike gold with one of these day three tight end types. So definitely been keeping a close eye on these guys throughout the season. So here's what I got. First guy is Cade Stover. He's kind of become the unanimous tight end three in this draft. Ohio State Buckeye, 24 years old when the season starts. Measurables are solid: 6'4", 247 pounds, 32 and 3/4 inch arms, 9 and 3/4 inch hands. Pretty much in line with Bowers, actually very similar to the Bowers physical profile, which I will admit I'm a little disappointed by. I wanted Stover to be a little bit bigger, but I don't think it's anything critical. He had a pretty decent combine, knowing the kind of player that he is. He actually had a nice 40 time. 4.65 is good for a guy who plays the way that he does. That's 79th percentile. 1.59 10-yard split is really good for a guy who is more of a traditional tight end. 84th percentile. 34.5-inch vert. 9'9" broad. We're both above average for a tight end. The only thing that wasn't very good was his 20-yard shuttle or 20-yard shuffle. 4.45 was 31st percentile. Not very good. You take a look at him on the big boards right now. They mostly have him just outside the top 100 or just barely inside it. The aggregate actually at the moment has him at 99th, but this changes from day to day. Some days he's in the top 100, some days he's not. I I think he's going to fall just outside the top 100 personally when all is said and done, because he's not a great athlete, and there are some tight ends who I think crept up the boards a little bit in at the combine, and while they won't go above Stover, they might do enough to deter teams from taking Stover, knowing that they can use a later pick on one of the other guys. But 2 years of solid production at Ohio State. Let's keep in mind who he's competing with for catches: Marvin Harrison Jr., JSN, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave. It's tough out there. So 25 games over the last 2 years combined, almost 80 catches, just shy of 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. He's a great route runner. He's got excellent hands. If you put him in contested catch situations, he'll usually come down with the ball. Honestly, the reason why I like Cade Stover so much is he makes me think of Will Dissly. If you're trying to replace Will Dissly in this draft, I think that Cade Stover might be the guy to go get. He's not quite the blocker that Dissly is yet, but neither was Dissly when he came out in the draft, right? So to me, Stover might be the guy you go get to replace Dissly. He's got surprising effectiveness after the catch with power and elusiveness. Remember that Dissly was actually really good after the catch before he suffered those two major injuries and he became more of a chain mover. But Dissly was somebody who was really good after the catch for those first 2 years for the little bit he played. I think he's got great potential to be a blocking tight end in this league as well. Like Will Dissly, I think he can kind of become that two-way tight end that you can line up in line and know that he's going to be a weapon in the passing game and also an asset as a blocker. He mostly played as an inline tight end in college as well, not a lot of slot reps, which I consider to be a benefit in this circumstance. You prefer versatility, but I want somebody who can win when he's lined up in line as a traditional tight end. He's not a great athlete for the modern day. I know that these percentiles mostly look good, but remember, these percentiles are including guys from the OOs and the early 10s before the tight end position became what it is today. So to a certain extent, when you compare him to modern tight ends, he is a little bit slower and a little bit less agile. His catch radius isn't that big. He does have good hands, but he's not great at catching off-target balls. He's got a little bit of rawness to his game because he was playing on defense until recently. Like Will Dissly. Remember, Will Dissly was a defensive end at Washington for a little bit there, and then was moved to tight end kind of at the end there, and didn't really do that much before he got to the NFL. So there's Cade Stover has done way more at the college level at tight end than Will Dissly ever did. So he's definitely got a head start on that. He needs to improve his aggressiveness as a blocker. I think his technique is good. I think that his hand placement is good. His footwork is good. On a technical level, he's a good blocker. but if he wants to actually become a great one at the NFL level, he needs some nasty in his game. So that would be my suggested improvement for Stover. I think that he has potential. You're going to have to work with him for a little bit, but I do think that he can become a two-way tight end, an all-around tight end in this league. And I would take him in the third round. I'd be okay with taking him in the third round. Be a little bit patient with him. He's a little bit raw, needs to work on his blocking aggressiveness, but I think he's worth it in the third round, especially for a team that needs a tight end like we do. Next guy I want to look at here is a guy who killed the combine, Theo Johnson, another one of these Penn State guys who isn't that productive in college, and then they get to the combine, they kill it, and then they get drafted really high because people see the potential. I don't know how it keeps happening. 23 years old when the season starts. Dude's big, 6'6", 259 pounds, 33-inch arms, 10.25-inch hands, so the measurables are all there for a freakish player, but on top of that, he's also got the insanely good testing numbers. 91st percentile 40 time for a tight end, 93rd percentile 10-yard split, 97th percentile vertical. The dude has explosiveness for days. 10-foot 5-inch broad is 93rd percentile. His 20-yard shuttle was 4.19, which is 86th percentile. His only testing result that wasn't very good was his 3-cone, which was 51st percentile, so still slightly above average. But the dude is big, and the dude is fast, he's quick, he's explosive. He's a phenomenal athlete. This could be like, there are some guys in this draft. They're not quite Darnell Washington, but there are some shades of Darnell Washington here. And I think Theo Johnson has gone far beyond his expectations from what he was doing at the college level. The big boards mostly have him in like the 4th round. A couple creep him up into the 3rd now. The aggregate currently has him right at the start of the 4th round. And honestly, with the way the hype is building around this guy, if he sneaks into the 3rd, it wouldn't shock me. I think he'll end up settling in the 4th round, though. Not very productive over his last 2 years at Penn State. 24 games, 54 catches, less than 700 yards. 11 touchdowns, though. That's nice. So he's a freak athlete. He's built really well. He's a pretty good route runner. He wins contested catch situations constantly. Knows how to use his physicality. He's somebody who will win at the catch point with his physicality. He's a sound blocker. He lined up all over the place for the Penn State offense, in the slot, in line, a little bit outside. He did it all. He's got good hands. There's a good foundation here. But he wasn't very productive, like we just said. Something's going on there. Maybe it's just the fact he didn't really have a quarterback. He does need to get better as a blocker in the run game, I think. I do think that there is still some room for him to grow. He needs to learn some technique. He needs to learn some proper hand placement, footwork stuff. His prodigious, his elite physical traits need to translate better on the football field, because right now the production is not matching what we're seeing from him. And it's not like he was stuck behind a bunch of players. It's not like Darnell Washington, right? Darnell Washington was stuck behind Brock Bowers. So, of course, he didn't produce that much. Who was Theo Johnson stuck behind? Who did Theo Johnson have catching passes on Penn State that made it so he could only catch a couple a game? He struggles a little bit finding holes against zone coverage as well. He's somebody who tends to kind of drift into defenders instead of sitting down in the hole away from them. Needs to pick up a little bit more situational awareness, I feel like. But the upper level potential here is undeniable. I think he's got a long way to go. I think that at first he'll just be like a red zone threat, like somebody you just throw the ball to in the red zone and he goes up and gets it. And hopefully eventually you get him and he develops into a star, but he's got a lot to work on to do that. I would definitely be willing to take him very early, day 3. I just don't know about taking him before then. I think that if you take him in the top 100, you're overdrafting somebody based on their traits only. Little too much for me. All right, so that's Theo Johnson. We got one more tight end for this video. It's another guy who I think did a lot of good work for himself at the combine. Ben Sinnott, Kansas State Wildcat, 22 years old, was very productive this year. Somebody I talked about a lot. 6'4", 250 pounds, 32 3/8-inch arms, 9.5-inch hands. So measurables are okay. They're fine, adequate. They're not anything over the top the way that Theo was, but Ben Sinnott can play. He's got the size for tight end stuff. His 40 time was good, 4.68. His 10-yard split was good, 1.59, but his vertical and his broad jump were off the charts. This dude had a 40-inch vertical as a tight end, 10 foot 6 inch broad. He's got explosiveness coming out of his wazoo. He's got explosiveness for days. So there's a great athlete in here somewhere. 6'8", 3-cone is off the charts for a tight end, 96th percentile. And he had a really good 20-yard shuttle, too, 81st percentile. So this guy has some really positive athletic traits here. The couple of the big boards have him in the 4th. A couple have him in the 3rd. The aggregate currently has him in the 4th. I think that's a pretty reasonable place for him to land. Very productive these last 2 years, especially 2023. Almost 50 catches, almost 700 yards, 6 touchdowns. So the production actually matches the athlete that we see at the combine. So that being said, I did not expect him to be this good of an athlete. He's a playmaker with all different kinds of routes. He can run verts. He can run 9 routes. He can run out routes. He can run stuff over the middle. He can run slants. He can do it all. He's not got a limited route tree. He's not somebody who's relegated to only making plays in a certain part of the field. He can make plays at all 3 levels. Good route runner. He's got great hands. He's always giving maximum effort out there. He's one of those guys with a high motor. You get him the ball, and he will make good things happen yards after the catch. He's going to make yards after he brings the ball in all day. He's a pretty good blocker as well. He doesn't sacrifice a lot in that area. Not a great one or anything like that, but I do think he's good for a guy that you're getting at 22 years old out of college. He's alignment versatile. He lined up in the slot. He lined up in line. Did a little bit of stuff as an outside receiver at Kansas State. Seems like he'll be able to handle all tight end responsibilities at the NFL level. And he also has a good sixth sense for getting open against his own defense. He knows how to find the holes. It's that same thing we talk about with a guy like JSN. JSN is a zone beater. He has an understanding of how to find this hole in the zone and sit down in it. That's another thing that Ben Sinnott brings to the table here that I think would be really good at the NFL level. So there's a lot to like with Ben Sinnott. Maybe he sneaks into the 3rd round because of some of this. He is a little bit on the weaker side. He probably needs to add some muscle if he wants to become a better blocker, but then do you lose some of the explosiveness and the speed? Maybe. So he might just kind of be relegated to be a mediocre blocker. It doesn't feel like he's as fast on the field as he was when he was testing. I think that there might be a little bit here of him having more track speed than he does football field speed. And when you put him in man defense, he kind of gets stuck sometimes, which is why I said what I said. It feels like he runs a little bit slower in pads than you would expect based on his 40 time and his 10-yard split. He should be able to beat man coverage more than he does. So, could be another JSN type, somebody who gets open against zone and can struggle a little bit against man. So there's a little bit of work that needs to be done here, but I think he's going to be a valuable player in the NFL very quickly here. Capable blocker and a playmaker all in one. He, in some ways, might be better, a more of a finished product than a guy like Cade Stover. I like Stover a little bit more just because I think Stover will be better once you have a little patience with him. But I'm not that far off on Ben Sinnott, and honestly, I wouldn't mind pursuing him in the 3rd round. If he's there in the 3rd and I feel like I'm not going to be able to get him in the 4th, I'm not against it. There's a lot to like here. There's a lot to be into. He's got tight end size. He's got tight end ability. This is not just some glorified slot receiver who can't block. So I'd be willing to go after him in the 3rd round if I thought that's what it took. All right, so those are those tight ends. Going to talk about more a little later today in another video, but those 3 guys are guys who I see lingering around that late day 2, early day 3. Let me know what you think about them. I will see you guys later. Go Hawks. More tight end stuff coming soon.